Hello, Treehouse friends. It's Miss Annie. This time I'm going to be reading Fior Usga. A little way beyond the gallows green of Cork, and just outside the town, there is a great loch of water, where people in the winter go and skate for the sake of diversion. But the sport above the water is nothing to what is under it, for at the very bottom of this loch there are buildings and gardens far more beautiful than any now to be seen, and how they came there was in this manner. Long before Saxon foot pressed Irish ground, there was a great king called Cork, whose palace stood where the loch is now, in a great green valley, that was just about a mile around. In the middle of the courtyard was a spring of fair water, so pure, so clear, that it was the wonder of all the world. Much did the king rejoice at having so great a curiosity within this palace. But as people came in crowds from far and near to draw the precious water from the spring, he was sorely afraid that in time it might become dry. So he caused a high wall to be built up around it, and would allow nobody to have the water, which was a very great loss to the poor people living about the palace. Whenever the king wanted any for himself, he would send his daughter to get it, not liking to trust his servants with the key of the well door, fearing they might give some away. One night the king gave a grand entertainment, and there were a great many princes present, lords and ladies, and nobles without end. And there were wonderful doings throughout the palace. There were bonfires whose blaze reached up to the very sky, and dancing was there to such sweet, sweet music. And feasting was there in the greatest supply for all who came, nor was anyone turned away from the palace gates, only a you're welcome heartily, was the porter's salute for all. Now it happened at this grand entertainment that there was one young prince above all the rest mighty comely to behold, and as tall and as straight as ever eye would wish to look on. Right merrily did he dance that night with the old king's daughter, wheeling her here and wheeling her there, as light as a feather, and footing it away to the admiration of everyone. The musicians played the better for seeing the fair dancers, and they danced as if their lives depended on it. After all this dancing came the supper, and the young prince was seated at the table by the side of his beautiful partner, who smiled upon him as often as he spoke to her, and that was by no means so often as he wished, for he had constantly to turn to the company and thank them for the many compliments passed upon his fair partner and himself. In the midst of this banquet, one of the great lords said to King Cork, "May it please your majesty, here is everything in abundance that heart can wish for, both to eat and drink, except water." "Water!" said the king, mightily pleased at someone calling for that of which was purposely there was a want. "Water you shall have, my lord, speedily, and that of such a delicious kind that I challenge all the world to equal it." "Daughter," said the king, "go and fetch some from the golden vessel which I caused to be made for the purpose." The king's daughter, who was called Fior Usga, which means spring water in English, did not much like to be told to perform so menial a service before so many people, and though she did not venture to refuse the commands of her father, yet hesitated to obey him, and looked down upon the ground. The king, who loved his daughter very much, seeing this, was sorry for what he had desired her to do, but having said the word, he was never known to recall it. He therefore thought of a way to make his daughter go speedily and fetch the water, and it was by proposing that the young prince, her partner, should go along with her. Accordingly, with a loud voice, he said, "Daughter, I wonder not at your fearing to go alone so late at night, but I doubt not the young prince at your side will go with ye." The prince was not displeased at hearing this, and taking the golden vessel in one hand, with the other led the king's daughter out of the hall so gracefully that all present gazed after them with delight. When they came to the spring of water in the courtyard of the palace, the fair Usga unlocked the door with the greatest of care, and stooping down with the golden vessel to take some of the water out of the well, found the vessel so heavy that she lost her balance and fell in. The young prince tried in vain to save her, for the water rose and rose so fast that the entire courtyard was speedily covered with it. He hastened back, almost in a state of distraction, to the king. The door of the well being left open, the water, which had been so long confined, rejoiced at obtaining its liberty, rushed forth incessantly, every moment rising higher, and was in the hall of entertainment sooner than the young prince himself, so that when he attempted to speak to the king, he was up to his neck in water. At length the water rose to such a height that it filled the entire of the green valley in which the king's palace stood, and so the present Loch of Cork was formed. Yet the king and his guests were not drowned, as would now happen if such an awful inundation were to take place. Neither was his daughter, the fair Usga, who returned to the banquet hall the very next night after this dreadful event. And every night since, the same entertainment and dancing goes on in the palace in the bottom of the loch, and will until someone has the luck to bring up out of the golden vessel which was the cause of all this mischief. Nobody can doubt that it was the judgment upon the king for his shutting up the well in the courtyard from the poor people, and if there are any who do not credit my story, they may go and see the Loch of Cork, for there is to be seen to this day the road to Kinsale passes at one side of it, and when its waters are low and clear, the tops of the towers and stately buildings may be plainly viewed in the bottom by those who have good eyesight, without the help of spectacles.